While I have had some scary incidents that happened throughout my younger life, this one has probably stuck with me the most. I remember when I was a little boy and my parents used to live in this crummy apartment somewhere in Cleveland, Ohio. I reminisce to the days of the constant smell of mildew and mothballs as my parents lived in a pigsty of clothes and old trash. They're not bad people, they're just not the cleanest in the world. My parents' room had one TV, one bed, a near-empty dresser, and the rest of the dresser's clothes scattered on the floor. They had decent jobs. My mom was a clerk at this big grocery store that had hundreds of people pass through in a day, and my dad worked as a valet for this fancy hotel, so he always got good tips. It's just that my family never cared much for buying furniture or anything that would liven up our home, so we stayed in that pigsty for a year. Wasn't the greatest of my childhood memories, but not because of the ugly environment or the tiny but effective smell of dirty clothes and a hint of fruity air freshener. I mean, the mixture of those smells made the room slightly smell of rotten fruit. It wasn't those things at all, in fact. I didn't even mind the smell that much. It was the bathroom that terrified me. I remember being at a height where I could just see a tiny speck of my head when I walked past the mirror, and seeing a black shadow sitting in the corner. I was too short to see the full figure, and when I would do a quick jump up to get a glance, it'd be gone. On days when my parents were alone in their rooms, I would be left alone in the other side of the apartment. I'd go to the bathroom to go pee, and see that the mirror would be fogged up like someone had just got done taking a shower. Even the heat you feel basking around after the shower was present. But I specifically remember my parents not even using the bathroom that day, as both of them were most likely napping after a long shift. I mean, even if they had used it, they didn't take showers in the evening. I always felt like I was being watched, but not by a bad presence, but rather a presence of comfort. I never felt scared when I felt this sense overwhelm me. Rather, I'd just smile and go back to playing with my Tonka truck or whatever I was doing. The reason I'd never feel worried is because I was just a tyke then, and never took a second chance to think that a sudden change of emotion in a room would be something horrible. However, I had a feeling that warm presence wasn't the only one nested in our apartment. Sometimes I'd watch Looney Tunes in my room with my tiny television and feel a cold chill go up my spine, and I'd feel like something wasn't right. When this feeling happened, I would usually run to my mom and dad and hang out with them, watching game shows and occasionally looking out their open door nervously, but I never saw anything suspicious. When my parents had to do night shifts, or when they were both working, I was dropped off at my aunt's until they returned. Both of the random feelings of comfort and dread disappeared when I would enter her house, and the feelings would instantly come back when I came back home later. Let me get to the bathroom again. It was right next to my room, and its door was always open, as my mom preferred. And since I didn't like the idea of closing my door at night, I kept mine open too. So every night I could hear every little thing that went on in there. Whether it be my parents going in there to do their business, the occasional automatic air freshener, which sprayed once every 5 minutes, and sometimes even the drippy tub faucet. Those things were like white noise to me, and it would help me go to sleep. Weird, right? You'd figure a constant drip would keep your eyes wide open, each drop annoying you more and more, until you couldn't take it anymore and would stop it. But the sound soothed me. One night, I was hearing the occasional spray and drips when my TV flipped on. I jumped out of my bed, as I figured maybe I rolled on the remote in my sleep and turned it off. When I whirled around again to walk to my bed, it turned on again. It wasn't showing any film either, just the static and white noise. I turned it off again and lied down. I woke up a few hours later in the early blue morning, and the TV was on again. A little creeped out now, I unplugged it and went into my parents' room to snuggle next to them. My mom opened one eye and caressed her warm arm around my body, making me drift off into a loving sleep. The next day, I told her the weird incident, and she shrugged it off by telling me it was an old TV, and most likely did stuff on its own like that. She said the next time, just unplug it again. I agreed. Strangely, the TV never had any more problems like that, but the next night, I remember hearing the faucet water drip like usual. But it was at a higher speed this time, and it grew to annoy me instead of soothe. I got up, adjusted my pajamas, and walked into the bathroom. The light switch wouldn't work, and I figured it must have burned out. However, the hall light provided a good enough glow inside the bathroom for me to see my way. I turned the faucet to the left tightly, slowing the drip, and was about to leave when I heard a short, distorted giggle of a woman. I stopped dead in my tracks and whirled around. Nothing. I shrugged it off as my mom watching a funny TV show and laughing at it. That night I had a dream. I was walking to the bathroom with only the hall light guiding my way. Each end of the hall that would lead to either the kitchen or my parents' room was swallowed by darkness. I was moving slowly, almost in slow motion, and there was no sound but light classical music. I saw the red painted bathroom door hanging open, the darkness swallowing it just like the hallway. The background music was being drowned with a light sound of drum cymbals being rapidly tapped. I pushed the door open more, only to have the light automatically flick on. The light had a weird reddish tint to it, and the tub was full of clear water. The sounds of music and drum cymbals stopped as soon as I looked at the calm pool. I felt drawn to the water, almost as if I should lay in the tub. Above the tub was a hand. It was a pitch-black manifestation and looked like a thick smoke, gesturing me to get into the tub, curling its fingers in a come-hither motion. I extended my hand to grab the figures, but as soon as my fingers were about to grasp the inviting hand, my other hand accidentally fell into the water, and immediately a maroon and sappy liquid dispersed from my fingers, having it fill the tub. It was blood. I screamed, but no voice came out, only the sound of an orchestra building up. The red blood lingered in my nose, filling it with the scent of dirty pennies. A strong dream, one so real you could smell and taste. The light red glow of the area turned into a crimson shine that made the room a horror movie nightmare. I backed up and the hand disappeared into the wall. The orchestra built up, not even giving proper notes, just playing the instruments with anger. From the maroon tub, the watery blood gushed out of the sides as I saw a plasma-coated figure slowly rise out of it. It was facing away from me, but it knew of my presence. The orchestra was now deafening with harsh notes that I can't explain. If you've ever heard A Day in the Life by the Beatles, you know what I'm talking about. I felt something leaking down my ear as the music felt like it blasted my eardrums. The crimson figure was sitting upright, facing the wall in front of it. Its long hair was thick, with clotted gore hanging about. It lifted its hands to rest on the side of the bathtub, and it slowly turned towards me. Its face, though lathered in the thick red goop, smiled at me with pearly white teeth. Its eyes were pure black with 2 white circles for pupils. Other than that, it looked normal, although it was very fucking far from normal. It slowly rose up to its feet, and the orchestra just stopped. Instantly, the lights turned out and I ran. I was still in slow motion, but I sprinted as fast as my slowed down nightmare would let me. I exited the bathroom and saw the white painted hallway walls bleeding from the ceiling. A solitary piano key clicked in a steady pace, like you hear in those Michael Myers movies when he's slowly following you. I turned around and saw the figure standing straight ahead of me, smiling with those snow-white teeth. It opened its mouth and showed me its tongue. It looked like it was snipped in half with a pair of old scissors. And everything stopped. I was frozen in the hallway mid-step, and the figure was also frozen, giving me that malevolent grin. I expected it to walk towards me, but it never did. I stared at it in a frozen fear, my eyes tearing up as its face was being embedded into a memory that would stick with me for years. And then I felt a drip on the top of my head. I couldn't tilt my head up to see what it was, and more rained down. It started to leak down my face, slight tickles and all. The mysterious liquid went in my eye. My left eye was a blurry red. The figure still gave me that grin, stuck in its place. When the drip stopped, its smile widened, and it took one step before everything went black and I woke up instantly. I was in my room looking up at the ceiling. I was wondering what time it was, so I tried to turn over in my bed, but I couldn't. I was frozen, just like I had been in my dream. It was sleep paralysis, but I hadn't known at that age. I tried to squirm, but I was frozen stiff, forced to look up at the ceiling. The sound of 3 quiet bells from my alarm clock told me it was 3 in the morning. I was squeezing my eyes shut in utter terror, hoping I'd just fall asleep and have a good dream like I always do. But I didn't even feel tired anymore. The sweat from my sudden awakening leaked down the sides of my head as I heard something in the bathroom. It was a squeak and then a heavy sound of flowage. The tub had been turned on, and it was on full blast. Then I heard soft footsteps on the carpet. It stopped at my door, and although I couldn't see it, I knew it was looking at me. It stared at me for a few minutes straight, and I laid there in that state, not being able to move or scream out. I heard that same distorted giggle, and then it walked away back to the bathroom, humming a bittersweet tune. I still heard the tub water flowing, and I tried my absolute best to scream, but it was just a muffled one that didn't give much sound. I heard what sounded like the figure entering the tub, and then the squeak of the faucet turning off. The sounds of someone moving in the water were heard, like it was trying to find a comfortable place to rest. It finally stopped, and then I could move again. I was crying silently as I ran into my parents' room, not looking back. I woke my mom up and told her everything. My mom rose to her feet and told me to calm down and go back to sleep, as the entire thing was just a dream. I told her I wasn't lying, and I tugged on her nightshirt. She rolled her eyes and agreed to come with me. My dad was working the night shift for the hotel. I stayed by my mom's side as she rubbed her eyes, adjusting to the hall light. We entered the bathroom and my mom flicked on the light. It didn't turn on. She sighed, complaining that she had just replaced it yesterday. She told me to wait there while she got a flashlight, but I refused and went with her. We came back and she shined the light in the room. Nothing but a tub full of clear bath water. I started breathing rapidly, wondering where the monster was. I grew a false bravado since my mother was present and went to touch the water. Nothing, just normal, warm water. I turned to her and told her she had to believe me, but she told me it wasn't funny to fill the tub like that and wake her up for such a stupid reason. I pleaded to her that I had nothing to do with it, crying. She looked around the bathroom with a troubled look and told me to sleep with her for the night. I remember the morning after, my dad came in the room quietly. He knelt next to me, putting his hand on my shoulder. He frowned and asked me to tell him what I saw. I explained to him, and I saw his lower lip tremble a tad. I saw something in there too. It scared me that he resorted to whispering, almost trying to make sure that that thing wouldn't hear us. Daddy was in there shaving, and I saw a hand crawl out of the wall. I turned around and saw a woman smiling at me, standing in the tub. And then she disappeared, he said shakily. I nodded at him and he looked at me. Don't worry, buddy, we're getting out of here. And then he kissed my forehead and simply walked out. We moved out 2 days later.
I tend to try and avoid going into public bathrooms because of something that happened to me in one before. I didn't really like them very much beforehand, but for a different reason. They are rarely as clean as I would like them to be. Most of the time, I'd rather hold it and wait until I get home. I'll cut to the chase here because I guess all the detail leading up to what happened really isn't important. When I was traveling, I must have eaten something that was really bad because I started getting some really bad stomach pains. I was hoping to find one of those standalone restrooms beside the road. I finally found one that was also part of a large park. I got into the bathroom rather quickly and ran to the absolute last stall. I was pretty fortunate that the place, although as icky as I expected it to be, was also very empty. I got in the stall and tried my best not to touch anything. I even left the door slightly open because I didn't want to actually touch the lock. Yeah, weird, I know, but it was pretty icky. I wasn't in there for 2 minutes when someone else walked into the bathroom. I was about to reach forward and close and lock my stall, but I paused when I heard the guy say to someone else to check the stalls and see if anyone is in them. The other guy replied that the doors were all open and he could see it from there. His partner told him to get down on his hands and knees and actually look to see if he saw any feet. Scared, I quietly raised my feet up because I didn't want anyone to know I was in there. Apparently the guy looked, didn't see any feet, and stood back up again. I tried to keep my feet up against the stall wall, and it was very difficult. The guys began talking about a third guy that was supposed to be meeting them there. At first I thought maybe it was a fellow gang member. I don't know. I guess I shouldn't assume they were in a gang, but they sort of acted like it. But one guy instructed the other to get behind the door and told him that when the person they were waiting for arrived and shut the door, to grab the guy from behind and slit his throat. Scared was not even the appropriate word anymore. I was terrified. I was alone in a bathroom with 2 guys who were just talking about murdering someone. What was worse was that my feet were beginning to slip. Just a little bit. I tried holding them up for as long as possible, and then the worst thing happened. My stomach was not cooperative and made the loudest groaning sound you ever heard. Well, I was in the right place because I was so scared I was gonna mess myself. The 2 guys heard it, and before I could even pull my pants all the way up, they were already over at the stall. One of them grabbed me and pulled me out, and I was yelling and screaming, trying to get away. I wouldn't have been able to, even if it was only one of them though. They weren't huge guys, but they were much bigger than me. Once I was dragged out of the stall, one of the guys slammed me hard on the ground, face down. My forehead hit the ground, and all of these gold stars actually appeared before my eyes. Before I had a chance to recover though, one of the guys grabbed my arm and roughly flipped me onto my back. He was holding me down with just one arm. He then took the other, reached for a sheath on his ankle, and pulled out one of the biggest knives I have ever seen outside of a samurai movie. Both guys started yelling at me, asking me what I was doing and if I was working for someone. I have no idea what they were talking about. I am not ashamed to admit I was bawling like a baby and pleading for my life. I told them I was just a guy trying to go to the bathroom. They didn't believe me. The guy was just showing me the blade of the knife, and I thought I was about to feel it slice me open. The door then opened, and I saw the greatest thing I'd ever seen in my life. 3 big, I mean huge, Hell's Angels looking guys came into the bathroom. I mean, they were enormous, wearing denim jackets with leather vests, and one of them looked like fucking Bam Bam Bigelow. He had flames tattooed on his bald head. "What the hell is this?" one of the guys asked. Before the 2 guys assaulting me could answer, I screamed for the bikers to help me, and I told them I was just using the bathroom and these 2 guys are going to kill me. The guy with the knife got up and moved as if he was going to attack the big guys, and the Bam Bam looking guy opened his vest and pulled out the biggest freaking handgun I ever saw. Big knife, big handgun, everything was big. It was a tense standoff. The guy with the knife looked like he was gonna move at any moment. As if sensing this, Bam Bam simply told him, "This is a fucking gun, dumbass." The 2 guys got the picture. The guy with the knife continued to hold it, but he held it above his head. He and his buddy moved along the wall until they got to the door. I kept expecting them to lunge forward with the knife, but he obviously knew it wasn't worth the risk. They opened the door and left. The guys who helped me were not actually Hell's Angels. They were just bikers. But they were sort of my angels that day. They made sure I was alright, and then walked me back to my car. Thank you so much.
Okay, so a little backstory before I tell you one of the crazy experiences of mine that happened during my 2-year security career from 2013 to 2015. I am a 6'7" male in Australia. I'd like to think I'm fairly tough and intimidating, but some of the shit that used to go on at the mall I worked at still gives me goosebumps to this day. So the mall I worked at was very, very large. Probably the largest in my state, I'd say. And all the way up to about 8:30 p.m., it would still be quite busy. Only around 9:30 would we manage to usher all of the stragglers out, and only at about 11 p.m. would all of the business owners be gone. My job was basically to patrol the mall and make sure there was no one sticking around after the doors were closed during the night. We didn't have guns or batons, only a can of mace that was very rarely used. There were multiple occasions where we would find would-be thieves hiding around trying to break into shops after dark, but they were normally far outnumbered by the 4 or 5 of us on shift at a time, and they would usually be intimidated by me or some of the other imposing members of security. This one night, though, shit started getting really weird for me on the night shift. So I'd say it was about 2 o'clock, and I was standing in the middle of the empty food court eating a sandwich. This was the only part of the mall that had any light at night due to the skylight, so it was comfortable to eat there. While I was eating, though, I heard a dull scraping noise from the hallway leading off from the food courts and to the toilets. It sounded like a piece of metal dragging across the floor. I was immediately put on edge, and I flicked on my flashlight without a moment of hesitation. I can remember creeping down the hallway, flashlight in hand, illuminating a good 6 or 7 meters in front of me. As I got closer and closer to the end of the hall, the noise became louder, until I was at the end of the hallway, and there was the bathroom doors to the left and right of me. I could tell the sound was coming from the female bathroom, though. I gripped the handle and opened the door a tiny little crack. The noise was now very clear and had me not scared, but confused. I yelled, "Hey, who's in there?" The noise quickly stopped. I paused a moment, listening hard through the tiny crack of the door. I could hear breathing. Low, male breathing. I shut the door, still gripping the handle tightly, and turned on my radio. "This is 1-3. I need help in the food court bathrooms. I think someone's here." No response. This was really strange, and it put me further on edge. Policy was to always answer the radio, and now I was truly becoming quite alarmed. "This is 1-3, does anybody copy?" Still no response. I can remember whispering to myself, "What the actual fuck?" Again, I opened the door a tiny crack. "Listen, mate," I said, sounding as intimidating as I could. "If you don't fucking come out with your hands up, you're going to end up eating your teeth tonight. Do you want that?" I sat there at the door, quite honestly terrified at this point, but there was no response. In fact, now there was no noise at all. I yelled into the bathroom, "Okay, mate, I'm coming in. If you do anything stupid, it's not my fault. You'll never walk again." I tried my hardest to sound scary, but my voice was quivering at this point. This whole situation made no sense at all. Why would someone be in the female bathrooms at this time? What was the metal noise? What the fuck is even happening? I very slowly opened the door and scanned my flashlight slowly across the room. All the cubicles were open, but other than that, the room was totally empty. I was definitely losing it. I walked into the center of the bathroom, closing the door behind me. Scared to the core, I said, "This is some horror movie shit, eh? Come out," when I heard the long, whining squeak of the door behind me. I spun around, basically crying at this point, and pointed my flashlight on a fucking massive man, at least a head taller than me, or so it seemed in my state at the time. He was Caucasian, in his 40s, with matted gray hair all over his forehead. He was midway through opening the door, but he stopped dead still in the middle of his action. He just looked at me. I'm not going to lie, I was so scared I froze. He lifted his finger up to his mouth, "Shh," before swinging the door open all the way and sprinting out with what looked like some type of metal box in his hand. Turns out he was just behind the bathroom door when I was opening it, and I totally missed him. I was so close to him and I didn't even notice him. He could have killed me if he had a knife or something, and that thought still haunts me to this day. Later that night, my radio miraculously started working again, and I got right on to telling my coworkers about my story. They collectively went pale when I told them what happened. We searched the entire mall and never found him. They all had similar stories, but none that were as creepy as that. I worked the night shift for another week before I quit. I'm not sticking around in a job like that. I needed help, and for some reason didn't get any. So weird giant guy in the bathroom, let's not meet again. Hey guys and ladies, thanks for watching. I want to thank Killer Orange Cat for working with me and being so nice to me all around. He has tons of awesome videos on his channel, but I'm sure you guys already know that. And I'd like to work with him again in the future. If you want me to tell your story or read a creepypasta, email me at the address in the description. Be good to animals, even people. See ya.
Já, snemma, bergsbus, hreish.
It slowly rose up to its feet, and the orchestra just stopped. It opened. Jesus Christ. That scared the fuck out of me. Ripley, I'm trying to do something here. I want to thank Killer Orange Cat. All right.